Welcome to Finding Latter-day Saint Ancestors in Record of Members 1836 to 1970. I, as was introduced, am Lynn Rasmussen, and I'm really happy to be here with you today. These are records that I really love, and there's exciting things happening behind the scenes with these records that I'll tell you about today. I'd like to start with this quote. "Behold, there shall be a record kept among you." Now, since the founding of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, records have been kept. The Church History Library, where I work, is the official archive of the church. And the Church History Library has thousands of collections, and it is our responsibility to preserve them and to assist with making records available to the public, including records that could help you with your family history. As the Church History Library genealogist, I am pleased to help you understand how to use the resources in the church archive to enhance and enrich your knowledge about the everyday life of your early Latter-day Saint ancestors. The library is located in Salt Lake City. It's on the corner of Main Street and North Temple, right across from the conference center. In its 5 floors are housed archival collections of journals, manuscripts, books, magazines, newspapers, audiovisual items, photographs, and much more. And I am here today to help you discover how just one of these collections, the Record of Members, can enhance your understanding and provide details about the lives of your Latter-day Saint ancestors. So our objectives today include that I would like to introduce you to ward and branch membership records. I will help you get acquainted with the types of forms used through the decades, and we will look at examples of each of these record forms. Once you're excited about what you might find, I will demonstrate how to find the records using both the Church History Catalog and the Family Search website. And we'll learn how to find the indexes and how to find the images. Records have been kept in various forms through the years. Ward reports and membership records often contain information such as what I have listed here on the slide. Birth date and place, often including a blessing date, a place of residence, baptism date and place, confirmations, marriage, death date and place, and missionary information also. These records may verify parents' names for you and family relationships. Places of residence may be verified, and when a member or family was received or removed out of a ward can also be found, and that can help you with putting your family timeline together. Also, priesthood ordinations are often listed in different forms through the years, listed different things, but that is one of the things you will find on some of the forms, and even national origins as we get into the 20th century. Now, these records can add a more robust understanding about your ancestors' life. Now, these records do not come without their difficulties. We have definitely inconsistent record keeping. The records really are at the mercy of the ward clerk or historian. What they chose to record is often what we get, and how they cared for the records and if they survived to be turned into the church archive was also their responsibility. So we do have inconsistent and incomplete record keeping. There are virtually no indexes. Very few are indexing, but we're working on that, with more to come about that. It is difficult to read the early handwriting. It's also difficult to read the old microfilm copies of the early handwriting. Some of the records may have sharing restrictions. Of course, they're subject to record loss, like any of our records out there, from just carelessness or disasters or any of those things that you've learned about in your family history classes about how records can be lost. And it is difficult to identify the unit. The unit, that term used in this presentation, encompasses wards, branches, and missions. Missions meaning before a stake and wards were organized, the jurisdiction may have been a mission. And so that's what I mean when I say mission. So when we talk about unit, that's what we're talking about, is that it's a general overarching term for those things. Okay, let's get started with our membership records. Now, in the 1960s and 70s, at the height of microfilming, the church microfilmed the existing church membership records. You can view these microfilms for research. Records were kept in various ways over the years, and the information that's inconsistent, and many records do not exist due to various reasons. So when they did this microfilming project, there's holes in what they were able to capture, and we reviewed those in the last slide. Let's learn more about these existing membership records. Now, through the decades, they were kept in different ways. And so here's a general outline of the types of forms and things that were used through the decades. And we are going to take some time and go through each one of these, looking at some examples, because I want you to be familiar with what you might be looking at so that you look thoroughly and so that you aren't confused at what you're seeing and have the best understanding that you can. So let's start with the 1830s to the 1870s. In this time period, the majority of the records are kept in a journal type. The clerk is writing paragraphs about what's happening, and very few of them are similar to this one that has the hand-drawn lines on the blank paper. So this particular example is a ward journal, and it is a record of members received in Nauvoo, Illinois in 1844. So this is one of our earliest. Now, these early membership records in this time period were usually kept in bound books of plain paper, and often the clerk went and bought the book himself, and the clerk would begin to record the baptisms, the confirmations, blessings of babies, marriages, deaths, priesthood ordinations, tithes and offerings are sometimes recorded here, and names of immigrants who have recently come into where the church is gathering may also be listed. So there's extra information, whatever the clerk felt like he wanted to record. Here's another example from this time period. This one is the Nauvoo Fifth Ward in 1850. And this clerk decided on December 15th, 1850, to make a list, almost like a little census of the members of his ward. We don't always see lists like this, and this is a wonderful find. So even though you're not getting the dates and ordination information and that sort of thing, you are getting your ancestor in place and time. You're getting people he's associating with, and also possibly some relatives. So it is helpful information even when it's just a listing like this. Now, this clerk actually hand drew the columns and started to record a lot of interesting things. Now, this particular record is 1852, and it's the Fillmore 15th Ward. And all kinds of information. If you can read it, I'll tell you what's up there in those columns. Information was recorded such as the number of hens, cows, calves, hogs, sheep, wagons, horses, tools, household furniture, jewelry. Also, there's a column for account debt or credit and money on hand. Now, the reasoning in this time period, what they needed to keep track of this, at this area chose to do this, is because they wanted to see who could help with new people coming into the community, who's got some extra cows or some extra chickens and could share with the people who are coming with nothing. This is 1852. So that's one of the reasons a record like this is kept. But what interesting information you're getting about your ancestor and what their life was like in this time period. Now let's move into the time period after the 1870s. So in the 1870s, it didn't all happen exactly in 1 year, but the church began to create pre-printed forms for the membership records for the clerks to use. So after arriving in the Salt Lake Valley, many Latter-day Saints were rebaptized to renew their covenants. You may be familiar with this, but this book, called the Long Book, had columns for those rebaptisms and reconfirmations. So that is something we don't always know about our ancestors and can be very interesting. When these books were open, they were 4 feet wide. So that you are seeing here on the screen, this is the first half of the open book. It's the left side, and you can, I think it's big enough for you to easily read some of those columns there. See, we've got first baptism, first confirmation. Now, these would mainly be what people are telling to the clerk from their own memory. Eventually, as these records are kept for a couple decades, you start to get people who are actually baptized at the time. But that's what you're looking at. These baptism dates and ordination dates are from their memory most of the time. Now, let me show you the right-hand side. Here's the right-hand side. This is the Franklin Ward in the Oneida Stake up in southern Idaho. And you can see there's rebaptism and reconfirmation columns. And some dates are filled in, and also with who is performing the baptism and confirmation. Now, if something were blank here, it doesn't necessarily mean they were never rebaptized or reconfirmed. It may mean that they just didn't remember the date. So take it for what it's worth. Now, these books, these big books, usually start with an index in the front, and they would include remarks at the end. Now, this remark section is going to be one of your most interesting, because even when sometimes if you think about, they don't start a new book every year, they just kind of keep going. And if somebody moves out of their ward, they would write it in the remarks. Or if somebody moves in, they'll hopefully, that's really nice if they do write it in. Sometimes you can discern that from the dates and things. Also, if somebody dies, they'll often write it in the remark section. So you want to be sure you read the entire record, just like you do as a good family historian with all the records you look at. You want to make sure you're reading everything carefully and thoroughly, as the information's hiding in these remark sections and things. Now, as we move on from 1920 or 1900 to 1920, they're called the 3-part forms. And the books that they were using, printed by the church and passed out to the wards, had 3 parts to them. The book often begins with an index. That's really part 4. But so part 1 would be what is called the record of members. So part 1 is where all the members of the ward would be listed. Now, again, they don't start a new book every year, but as they move in and out, they're going to make notices in remarks, or you might see a line drawn through a family or something like that. And then they just keep adding on to the sections. So you don't get lists of members in this year, these were the ward members, or in this year, these were the ward members. You get this running list. This is coming from the Kanara Ward in the Parowan Stake down in southern Utah, and it's about 1918. I think that's when this particular book began. Now, the section 2, so we've got the record of members section. The section 2 is record of ordinations. So they would record what ordinations were taking place. And look over here, you can see what office, priests, teachers, deacons are listed there. So as that's occurring, they're writing it in as it goes. Now, the third section is called Record of Children. So here's where you will find a blessing of a child, and it will include their birth date. So you'll get parents' names, birth date and place, and then you will get the date of the child was blessed. Now, when that child, if that same child who was blessed in this ward lived to the age of 8 and was baptized in this ward, they would be added to that first section, record of members, and this little plus sign would be written in to indicate now they're on the other list. So now they're on both lists. So that's just, again, a running list. Now, each ward was to make an index when their book was full. They're to make an index, and they would have these 3 columns of what number corresponded with those. This is record of members, this is record of ordinations, and this is record of children. So if they're helps you get to the right line on each one of those separate sections of this book. So I hope that that makes sense. So that continued on till about 1920. Here's your names written in, and here's those record references. Hopefully the records you need, the clerk made an index. Now, in 1920, the church started using what's called the box type forms. Now, the box type forms were up 4 to 6 boxes for, depending on the year. The books were a little different. Each box is an entry for a different person. The box has a space for the member's name, sex, date, and place of birth, parents' names, date of blessing, baptism, and confirmation, and by whom performed, dates of priesthood ordinations in office and by whom performed, arrivals and removals from the ward, spouse's name, marriage date and place, and whether it was a civil or a temple ceremony. These box type records were indexed at the front of the book by the box number. Here's your box numbers. There you go. Not by the page number. So when you're looking at the index, it is referring to these individual box numbers. Okay, I've enlarged one of these boxes so you can get a better idea of what's being asked. Now, again, these dates are basically coming from their memory if it is before 1920. And if it's during this time period, 1920, 1941, you're probably getting a time of event. This remove to section was when someone moved out of the ward and they knew what ward they were going to, they would put that in there with the date, which can be really, really helpful information to help you get to the next set of records you need to look at for your family. Now, from 1941 to the present, we have individual member cards. Now, of course, today these are kept on computer, but they began in 41 to keep these individual cards. The same information as we've seen on previous forms was recorded. When a member left the ward, the card was returned to church headquarters and then, upon request, sent to the member's new ward unit. So this card followed you around. And you can imagine that some got lost along the way or never sent into headquarters and that sort of thing. But hopefully we did a pretty good job of it. It's a pretty good system for the time. Now, when a person died, as this card indicates, the card was sent back to headquarters at Salt Lake City, and it was placed in what is called the deceased member file. Now, the deceased member file is open to research because the people are deceased, and it goes clear up to 1988. So 1941 to 1988, you can look at deceased member cards, but the ones that are not in the deceased file, you may not look at. And why? You might ask. It's because there are living people listed on these cards. So they're not available for you to look at. You can, in certain cases, make a request to the church history library, and they will look at your request and the reasons you need to see it and how you are related to someone who might have a card with living people on it. You have to consider that if there are children and someone in 1941 has a card and then later in their life, clear up to into the 80s, is listing children on it, those children are probably alive for sure. So we need to be careful, and we always try to protect the living people's information. I'll talk to you about how we find these records coming up, so don't worry about that. Okay, I also want to talk to you about the annual genealogical report, which is nicknamed the Form E. So from 1907 until about the 1970s, the church instituted the annual genealogical report, and church wards were required to turn in this annual statistical and genealogical report. Each ward, branch, or mission was asked to do so. Not all complied, but we get pretty good compliance. The ward report was designated the Form E. I told you that. The mission report was the Form 42 FP. That's probably all in your handout. You don't really need to remember that, but Form E will be something you hear again. So these reports cover about 1907 to 1970. So you see that they're being kept concurrently with those record of members records, and they are housed together. When that microfilming project took place in the 60s and 70s, they put the Form Es with the ward report, the ward record of member report. So everything is laid out and organized by ward unit. So you'll find them together, and that's why they're part of this collection. But what they would record on these Form Es, let's take a look at that. You're going to get all this kind of information. Births, names of parents, blessings, baptisms, priest ordinations, marriages or divorces, depart and return from missions, and deaths. Now, the tricky thing, well, let me go back. Not quite right for that. The tricky thing here is that this is not, the Form E is not a list of everyone in a ward. You are only listed in these designations if you have one of these events occurring. So you have to kind of know a little bit about your family. You have to know when children were born, or when they may have been baptized, or when they may have married. And then you can look on the particular sections. The Form Es are all in sections, and they're titled births, blessings, baptism. They're titled like that, these sections. And the sections will have those events for a year. So each year has a Form E report. They should. And hopefully that will be what the case when you go looking for these, that you can find these. So you're going to need to look at lots of different years. If you're not exactly sure when an event occurred and that's what you're trying to verify, you will be going through a lot of the microfilms to find their names. But in these Form E reports, I have seen extra information written in. For instance, one time I saw where a family moved into a ward, so they put them in, and they put in everybody's baptism, and whatever the family could remember, they filled it in there. And then I noticed that one of the children had some different handwriting with different ink, and it was written in, a death date was written in. And I thought, wow, that is something that I would never have found if I didn't continue to look through all of these Form Es and be able to come across that. So you want to be thorough and know that it may take some time to verify what it is you're looking for in the Form Es, but they're very valuable and very fun too. Okay, now that you're excited about what cool things you might find about your family, we're going to talk about how you're going to find the records. The Church History Library is the owner and keeper of the Record of Members collection. The records are on about 8,400 rolls of microfilm, and those microfilms have been digitized. Now, Family Search, this is why I have the two logos here. Family Search and the Church History Library are working together to make these records digitally available to you. This project has begun, and it is continuing. So Family Search will create the index of the records from 1836 to 1923. And this indexing project has begun. It's growing daily. It's a very exciting joint project. In Family Search, the index pages that have been indexed thus this far are already available on Family Search. So this is your title page. The exact title of this collection is The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Record of members worldwide, 1836 to 1970. Now that we've navigated to this page, if you don't know how to navigate to historical record pages, BYU and many other places have beginning classes on how to use Family Search historical records. You can get acquainted with that process, or you can put the collection title in to the research page. Use search up here. Again, we're not going to go into showing that to you. There are other presentations that could help you with navigating the indexed records. So there are two things on this page I want you to be aware of. More options. These 4 boxes do not provide this computer with enough information to help you search effectively. So always use more options. That should be good practice that you're always doing. Open this up. You'll get more boxes to put information in. The other thing is, and I think it's very underused, is how to use this collection. Every index record set has a how to use this collection that will help you understand what you're looking at, how to navigate it, many other things about it that are important. But the reason it's so important on the Record of Members historical record search page is because not all the records are indexed yet. It's a work in progress. So if you put your ancestor's name in here and nothing comes up, you might think, oh, I guess he's not in any of these church records, which might not be true, because what if the church records your ancestors in just aren't indexed yet? So this page, how to use this collection, will help you know what has been indexed. So it navigates you to a Family Search wiki page about this collection. Now from this wiki page, I'm going to scroll down. Now my screenshot is showing that I've scrolled down, and here is the inventory. The inventory will let you know what wards, branches, and mission units have been indexed. So you could now see the value of using how to use this collection and coming to this wiki page. You can also find this wiki page by searching in the wiki search field and putting the title in, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Record of Members, and it'll pop right up for you too. But you need to be aware of why you're not finding your ancestor. You want to come back regularly to this chart, as it is a growing chart. I think they update it about every month as the indexing continues. Okay, so I'm going to just show you an example of searching for someone. So I've opened up my more options. I filled in my ancestor's name, put in as much as I needed to, hit the search button, and this is what the index record looks like. Some of you may have seen these before. You may have already had hints come in for your ancestor that they're in a record, and it looks like this. So this is the indexed information that came off of the record. No image is available. Well, do you want to see the image of the index record? Of course you do, because you are a thorough researcher, right? And you want to see the image and get more information from that original image. So if you want to see the image, you need to find remember, this is a joint project, and the Church History Library, where I'm presenting from, is the owner of these images. And so you've got to come here to find the image. And I'm sure I put this information in your handout. Don't panic and try to write down the URL up here. It's all in your handout for you. So you are at the Church History Catalog. Church History Catalog. Okay. This is the call number, CR space 375 space 8. This is a library catalog. We use call numbers. So that's the call number for the Record of Members collection. But you can also put in the title. It will search by title. You could put Record of Members 1836 to 1970, and you will be navigated to the same place. So either one, they're both in your handout. Oh, did you notice back on that page that you needed to be signed in? You will need to sign in to your church account. Okay, not your family search account. Some people have the same, but use your church account. All right. Now that we've put in the call number, it has navigated us to record of members 1836 to 1970. Click on this title. Okay, now you're navigated here to the collection. Now remember that in the 60s and 70s, they went and did that big microfilming project, and they housed everything together by unit name. So you need to know the unit your family lived in. We'll talk more about that later. Hang on to that. I have some tips for you. But this over here, right here on the left, this gray part is the finding aid that will help you get to the branch, the ward. So we're going to use A as an example. Okay, it's alphabetical by the branch name. So let's use A. You can click on A all day long, but it won't do anything until you click on this arrow next to it. So click on the down arrow, and it opens up alphabetical ranges in the letter A. Abbotsford branch to Afton First Ward. If you find the range that your branch name fits into, click on the down arrow. There you go. Now it's opening up the individual names of the wards. We're going to use Abbotsford because it's right here at the top. Select the ward or branch that you're interested in. Oh, and don't forget this tip. If you are working with a ward that's like 15th ward or 31st ward, you need to spell out the number. Okay, so 15th ward's going to be in the F's. So just remember that tip. That's not very intuitive. Anyway, Abbotsford branch. Now we select that, and it opens up a page that looks like this. It's the Abbotsford to Afton section. Here's the Abbotsford branch, and you have this request digital access. You need to click on request digital access. You will be given a form to fill out. Fill out the form, and within a few days, you will receive the email that will let you know what level of access you have to see this image. So that's your process for getting to the images. If you want to do it from home and can view the images at home on your own computer. Okay, you do not have to come into the church history library to access the digital copies of these microfilms if you will go through this process and fill out the form. Now, these images are also available at the Family Search Library. Okay, so I'm going to quickly walk you through this. If you need more help using the Family Search Library catalog, there are plenty of explanations and helps out there if you haven't used the catalog very often or just need a little refresher on how to use the catalog. But I'm going to run you through what you need to do with the catalog. Okay, under the search tab, choose catalog. Use place search. Put in the place that you're interested in. Hit the search button. It will open up all of the collections that are in the catalog for, what did we use? Louisiana. Okay. You want to then scroll down to church records right here. There's 37 church record sets under the heading Louisiana. You can also, if you use the catalog, you know you can use smaller jurisdictions in a state. So go ahead and do that too. Open that up and look for the author of the church record to be the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Of course, you're going to see lots of different denominations, but look for Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as the author. And notice it says Annual Genealogical Report Form E, 1907 to 1951, right there. And then this third one, and you want to scroll the whole thing because these aren't always right in a row like that. It was just nice to choose this one because it fit on my screenshot. But notice the last one that we just opened says the Annual Genealogical Report Form E's Record of Members. So that's where your record of members is, right there. And these others, if they were turning the genealogical reports in every year, there's going to be a lot of them. So that's why there's 3 different microfilms for this area. Okay. But here's your record of members. So that's how it's cataloged. Click on the one you want to open. Open it up. I'm going to scroll down the page. Right here is your microfilm number. All right. You have to view these at the Family Search Library in Salt Lake City on microfilm. Okay. They do not have digital copies. The digital copies are at the Church History Library, and you have to go through that system to see the digital copies. You can come to the Church History Library and see them in person there too on the microfilms. Either way. The Family Search Library does not have clear to 1970. Most of them stop in about 40, 41. I've seen some in the 50s. In fact, this one, I think I cut it off down here, but I think it went up to 51 or something. But you won't get the latest ones in 70 at Family Search Library. Now, I've told you that these are organized by the ward and branch name, and it may be a problem trying to find the ward and branch name where your family was living. So I thought I would talk about a few of the records that will help you discover what ward or branch they might have been living in. Your own family records, your oral histories, your journals, your diaries. Make sure that you're being a top-notch researcher and looking at all the known information and making your family timeline so that you've gleaned everything you possibly can to help you find the right record of members. Now, a birth record might help with the location. Oh, okay, when this child was born, they were living in this city. Okay, this child was born, they were in this city. That will help you to narrow down a ward. Church census are a wonderful help. So go into those records and see, it will actually list the ward name. So if you're lucky enough that you're in the time period where those can help you, it's a great help for finding the ward. Federal censuses will help you out, especially if you're out of Utah. If you are in locations outside of Utah, there's not going to be a whole lot of wards to choose from like today. So the federal census will give you a good help. So you should have done thorough research in your census. City directories can help. You can use Mapping Mormonism or something like that can help you with locations where there are wards. And let me talk about a couple special cases. Now, if your family is in Salt Lake City, there's a lot of wards. And so you will need to narrow it down with directories and maps. So they will be your friends to help you find the right ward in Salt Lake City. Because, if you're down in Nephi, Utah, and there's 3 wards, you could look at all 3 microfilms. And it wouldn't be a big deal. Like if it's Salt Lake City, you cannot look at all those. Well, you could, but you probably don't want to look at all those wards. Okay, another tip is remember that if someone died between 1941 and 1988, you can see those 41 to 88 individual membership cards. So if your primary person is deceased, you can see the deceased member, go into the deceased member file and look at those. Those are available at the Family Search Library. They are housed in special collections only because they cannot be copied, but you can transcribe the information off of it and it can help you find the ward names that you're looking for. So that is the only way to see the deceased member file. Okay, we're finished going over the record of members and how to find them and what you might find. We've talked about their value for you. We've talked about some of the difficulties you might run into with the inconsistencies or the lost records. We talked about the different types of forms so that you're aware of what to look for. Look for indexes, look for ward members in all the years. Remember that the formees and the record of members were kept concurrently in the 20th century. So as long as you know what you're dealing with, I think you'll be successful. We talked about how to find the records, about finding them at the church history library system and finding the records at the Family Search Library. The indexes, some of them are already out there. You may have run across them and you want to see that image. So you got to jump through some of these hoops to get to the images, but they are available to you. Now, in the future, we are hoping to be able to continue to work together with Family Search and to get these out to you eventually, digitally available. That's being talked about and worked toward. But if you want to look at something now, this will be your process. So I hope that you've enjoyed getting to know this process and these wonderful records. Thank you for joining me today.